Hello, and welcome to Weekend Wisdom, a podcast from creatingafamily.org. Once a week, we answer your questions about adoption, foster care, or kinship care, relative caregiving, and if you have any questions about any of those areas of life, we would love to talk to you. So send a question in to info@creatingafamily.org, and we'll get you in the queue. We use expert advice, personal experiences, and our huge body of content on the website to craft an answer, and hopefully all of our answers are strengthening families and listeners out there. I am Tracy Whitney. I am the new host of both this podcast, Weekend Wisdom, and our regular weekly hour-long podcast. You can find any one of the two podcasts on any one of the big platforms where we catch all of our favorite podcasts, and we hope that you would like, subscribe, or follow whichever your podcast platform asks you to do so that you can keep up with new content that we give you every week. Today, we're going to talk about parenting a child whose parents' addiction leaves impacts for the child and then for the family who adopts or fosters that child. These impacts can be challenging to manage in everyday life, and our anonymous listener in Louisiana asked this particular question. Hello, I have resentment against my soon-to-be adopted child's mother, who is an addict. I get frustrated with his disrespect and his disobedience, and the bitterness and resentment towards her rises up. He respects my husband way more than me, and I'm trying so hard not to let it show or to take it out on him. Please, I need help. So, anonymous listener, we are so grateful that you were brave enough to reach out and ask for help. We understand why this feels horrible and overwhelming and challenging to negotiate. And I hope that we can kind of put together some ideas today that will help you navigate this very challenging scenario. So you don't mention whether or not this child has known trauma or known prenatal exposure to alcohol or drugs, but you do say that his birth mom is currently addicted. So I think it's pretty safe to assume moving forward in this conversation that there has been some level of trauma, neglect, and or prenatal exposure that is leaving all of those things that are leaving impacts for this child to manage and to negotiate. It's easy to feel frustrated and angry about a birth parent's choices that impact a child. Vulnerable children are often made vulnerable by the choices of the adults around them. And so I empathize with your anger and your frustration and your bitterness and resentment. And I'm hoping that I can help you reframe some of that a little bit today to give you some tools to manage your relationship with this child, your soon-to-be adopted son, and help you create more peace and more empathy and understanding in your home as the two of you work through this relationship together. I think it's really important to start by taking a step back and talking to yourself about what you do know about your son. You know, first of all, that he is not able to be raised by his birth mother. So there's some element of loss in his history. You know that it's likely that he was not able to be raised by her because of her addiction. And so that substance use created some challenging impacts in the moment for them because they were then separated, and then later for him as he's growing and developing. It stands to reason that if there was active addiction going on in the home that resulted in him needing to leave, that there may have been active addiction going on while she was pregnant with him. So that, again, that likelihood of prenatal substance exposure is a pretty strong likelihood, I would think. I don't think it's too large of a leap to make. So then let's also consider what we know about the common impacts of trauma, loss, prenatal exposure, those kinds of things. You don't say how old he is right now, but in general, kids who have experienced prenatal exposure to drugs and alcohol will often experience things like sensory issues. They either get overstimulated or they're under-responsive to stimuli. They have difficulty with changes. They have difficulty moving from one activity to the next. They have difficulty with new experiences. They often exhibit an insecure or anxious attachment. They struggle to learn from their mistakes. They have a hard time predicting or understanding cause and effect. There's some attention differences or attention struggles that they may have. They tend to be pretty impulsive, again, because they don't understand cause and effect. And they can have pretty poor social or communication skills. They may have difficulty maintaining relationships or making friends. And so these are some of the kind of broad brushstroke impacts that we see in toddlers through school-aged children who have had a history of prenatal substance exposure. And you'll notice on that list that in some way, each of those impacts can be perceived as disrespect or disobedience or defiance if we're not seeing them through that lens of prenatal substance exposure. And let me be clear here. When I say trauma, neglect, abuse, and prenatal substance exposure, I understand that there's differences between all of them, but I also understand that prenatal substance exposure is its own kind of trauma. Pre-birth trauma, and then the impacts that it leaves later can be traumatic for the child as well. So if we can look at your son's behaviors and attitudes and perceived disrespect or disobedience instead through the lens of what he might have experienced prior to coming to your home, through the lens of possible exposure to drugs or alcohol, we can leave then some room for different explanations for his behaviors. So what might feel like disrespect could actually be an anxiety that he's feeling internally about whether or not you're going to care for him unconditionally, whether you're going to be able to love him no matter what he throws at you, and that you're going to welcome him whether he struggles or not. What might feel like disobedience could be a strong sensory aversion to a shirt that you've chosen for him or the sandwich that you've put in front of him. What might feel like favoring your husband could be an insecure attachment or some difficulty with social skills, and he maybe relates better to your husband than he does to you, and he doesn't know how to navigate that. It could be that it is a social skills issue and not, favoring your husband as much as it is challenge within himself to relate differently to you than he does to your husband. So the point of kind of all of those what ifs is that when we reframe our children's behaviors as an expression of something else that's going on inside of them, rather than something that they're doing to us, it can spur us towards, first of all, compassion, but it can also spur us to examine what else they might need to succeed, or at least to improve some behaviors. And I'm not saying that this reframing is easy. Believe me, it's challenging, and I get that. It takes lots and lots of practice, and I'm still practicing. I've got 2 children by adoption, and I'm still practicing these skills, so you're not alone. But there are 3 things that I think might help you change your filter when you look at your son. The first would be to take a beat. Just take a pause. When the behaviors are happening and you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, stop. Take a deep breath. Whether you're muttering a little mantra to yourself like he can't, not he won't, or behavior is an expression of a need, you can count to 10, take a deep breath, find a way to slow your roll, stop yourself, and kind of put that new lens on and view this moment that you're having with your son through a different filter. The second thing that you can do is to invite him to pause. You can invite him to take some deep breaths, offer him a glass of cold ice water, something that will kind of reset his system and reset his brain for a new path forward. And this will take some practice. He may not be open or willing to try it at first, but gentle, slow offerings every time it happens will start to rewire his brain and teach him how to put that filter on himself and think about how to connect with what's going on internally so that he can change the behavior externally. So you're inviting him to pause. You're taking some deep breaths. You're getting him a glass of ice water. You're going to participate with him in re-regulating whatever behaviors are going on. You're going to create some sort of calming actions between the two of you so that he can choose to see that you are with him, that you want to see him succeed, and that you want to help him regulate. And if he doesn't get it the first few times, again, this is a slow, repetitive, consistent process. So first you're pausing yourself, then you're pausing him. Another thing that you can do is to be very gracious and generous with the second chance mentality. So give lots of do-overs, give lots of apologies on your side. Hey, buddy, I didn't handle that very well. Can we try that again? Offer him opportunities to try it again, offer lots of forgiveness, and be honest. When you try a regulation strategy that's not working, say, okay, let's try something else because this is not working. If you can make yourself humble in that way, make yourself approachable and accessible in that way, and demonstrate that you're giving yourself second chances and that you're willing to give him lots of second chances, you're communicating to him that you believe that you can get through this together and that it's a you and him against the problem versus you against him. And that's kind of the stance that you want to take is, I'm with you in this. I can do this. You can do this. And we're going to do this together. And getting him on your team and demonstrating to him that you're on his team against the problem is really kind of the goal to this being gracious and generous. So just to recap real quick, number one, you can try to pause yourself. Number two, you can try to pause him. And number three, you can demonstrate graciousness and second chances by offering them to him frequently and then demonstrating that you offer them to yourself frequently also. When you and your son are not in the heat of a challenging moment, then you should consider how to educate yourself about prenatal substance exposure, about parenting children with challenging behaviors, about collaborative parenting strategies that will empower him to own his behavior and make profitable and productive changes. We'll list resources for those things in the show notes. And then depending on his age and his verbal abilities, you can start teaching him the language that he needs to express what's going on inside of him. When we help our kids label their feelings, it gives them an understanding of their internal state, and it builds their confidence to handle it the next time big feelings come up. And underneath all of this, let's try and remember that big feelings are often very scary for our kids, no matter their age. Feeling out of control, feeling overwhelmed, feeling confused. Those are not feelings that our kids handle easily, especially if they've not had lots of practice in healthy ways to handle those easily. So the next time that he feels scared or angry or out of control, you can just come alongside of him and say, hey, you sound really angry right now. Can I help you calm down so that we can talk about it? It might be a pretty significant shift for you to move from frustration and resentment to supporting and connecting. But I think that if you can kind of adopt this idea of changing your lens, putting your different glasses on to help him, if you're viewing him as a child who's having a hard time rather than a child who's giving you a hard time, you'll gain some skills in not taking it personally when he does have a hard time. If you are struggling with disrespect, maybe verbal challenges or verbal outbursts, you can draw a line and say, hey, that does not feel very kind or respectful. So right now, let's not say anything else. Let's just calm down until we can talk about this in kinder and more respectful ways. It also means working hard not to take it personally when you see him favoring your husband more than he does you. I get it. It's really hard not to take it personally when our kids are melting down or acting out or blowing us off. just make sure that you acknowledge it and you cope with it. Find a good therapist, find a counselor, somebody who you trust to help you work through and ask you some hard questions and help you find the answers that you need to process this struggle. And then no matter how small, in tiny increments of progress that you're making, make sure you acknowledge that. Say it out loud. Say, wow, I handled this much better today than I did yesterday. Say it in front of your kids. Say, hey, I'm so proud of myself. I handled your frustration with me much more kindly today than I did yesterday, and I'm proud of myself. But then also make sure to pull something out of that interchange that you're proud of him for. Say, hey, buddy, you calmed down really quickly and got a hold of your escalating emotions. And I really appreciate that you tried so hard to do that. If you're both making progress and both of you are learning how to call out that progress, you're building bonds and connections between you of respect and admiration, which can go a long way towards helping you the next time something big blows up. I'm not saying that any of these tips are going to stop the blow-ups. I'm saying that you can make progress towards reducing the blow-ups and making them less painful and making them less extreme a little bit at a time. So make sure that you're given all the kudos and high fives that you need to yourself, but also that your son needs from you. I finally want to encourage you to engage in and model for him what healthy repair between you can look like. So when something goes wrong, there's a big blow up or a meltdown, no matter how you handle it in the process of the meltdown or the blow up, make sure you go back later by saying something like, whoa, buddy, that must have felt so scary when you were screaming and shouting at me. I'm really sorry that you felt all those big emotions and didn't know what to do. And I'm sorry that I yelled at you when it was happening. That was scary for both of us. I'm working on how to do it better, and I see that you're working on how to do it better too. I love you, and I want you to feel safe with me, and I want you to know that no matter how big or scary things are, I'm with you, and I'll always be with you. And you can kind of wrap things up by asking, like, do you feel ready to give me a hug, or can I give you a hug? Do you need some more time? Make sure that you're just doing kind of those touch points of repair between you so that things don't get left open-ended. That feels sometimes just as scary to our kids when things are left open-ended. But hang in there. I know it's really hard work when your kids are melting down, when you're feeling angry and frustrated and resentful towards them for impacts that they really had no control over. And I think kind of switching your lens from he's giving me a hard time to he's having a hard time, from he won't to he can't, will give you kind of a new way to look at him, empathize with him, come alongside of him, and heal the stuff that's going on inside of him, but also heal the relationship between you. So hang in there. I know it's hard, and I hope that you will consider checking out our Facebook group where you can get even more support. It's facebook.com/groups/creating a family. And listeners, if you found today's episode helpful, please leave us a rating or a review. We are on Spotify, we are on Apple, we are on YouTube. We'd love for you to join us at any one of those platforms and tell us how we're doing. We thank you for your time and have a great day.